Today, we're going to take a look at something like a national report card for India, but for literacy. And you know, the headline numbers, they look pretty good. But the real story, the one we're going to dig into, is in the fine print. That's where you find the details, the struggles, and the massive inequalities.
And here is that headline number. The latest national survey shows India's literacy rate for everyone aged 7 and up has hit a historic 80.9%. Now, what does literate actually mean here? Well, it's defined as being able to read and write a simple message with understanding in any language.
To really get how big of an achievement this is, you have to rewind the clock, way back. Right after independence, in 1951, fewer than 1 in 5 Indians could read and write. Think about that. So to go from just 18% all the way to over 80%, that is a monumental climb. It's really a testament to decades and decades of work.
But that brings us to a really crucial question. A national average is, well, it's just an average, right? So while the country as a whole seems to get a passing grade, does that mean every student, every single community is also passing the test? As we're about to see, the answer is way more complicated than that.
This is where things start to get really interesting. Because when you look closer, India's literacy story isn't one single story at all. It's more like a tale of 2 Indias, or maybe even a bunch of them, where your ability to read and write can seriously depend on where you happen to live.
This map tells you pretty much everything you need to know in a single glance. You can see these states in the Northeast shaded in that deep blue getting close to almost 100% literacy. But then your eyes are drawn to these large states right in the heartland, in red, and they are lagging way, way behind. The difference is just stark. Okay, let's put some hard numbers on that map. At one end of the spectrum, you've got Mizoram at an incredible 98.2%, with Kerala and Goa right behind. Fantastic. But on the other end, states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan are all hovering around that 75% mark. We're talking about a gap of almost 24 percentage points between the best and the worst. That is a massive divide.
So we've seen that huge regional gap. But you know what? The inequality doesn't stop there, not even close. So now let's peel back another layer and look at 2 other critical divides that really define India's literacy landscape: the gap between men and women, and the gap between cities and villages.
If you look at the whole country, the numbers are crystal clear. Male literacy is sitting at 87.2%, while female literacy is 74.6%. That's a gap of more than 12 percentage points. At the exact same time, there's an 11-point gap between urban and rural India. And look, these aren't just small statistical blips. They represent tens of millions of people on the wrong side of that divide.
Now, that national gender gap of 12 points, that's just the average, and it hides some absolutely shocking realities. In a high-performing state like Mizoram, the gap between male and female literacy is tiny, just over 2 points. Awesome. But then you look at Rajasthan. The gap explodes to a staggering 20.1 percentage points.
And this is where these disadvantages just start to stack up. So we have a regional gap, a gender gap, and an urban-rural gap. What happens when they all overlap? Well, let's go back to rural Rajasthan. There, female literacy plummets to just 61.8%, while male literacy is almost 84%. So being a woman in a rural area in a state that already has lower literacy rates, that's like a triple challenge.
This all leads to a very natural question, right? It's about resources. Are these massive gaps happening because of underinvestment? Let's try and follow the money and see if India is actually putting enough of its resources into education to try and bridge these divides.
I mean, it's the question on everyone's mind whenever we see disparities like this. Is it just a matter of money? Is India spending enough on education? Plain and simple.
Well, if you look at it globally, India's spending, around 4.1% of its GDP, is actually pretty similar to China's. But it is well below what countries like the US, Sweden, or Finland invest. So while the spending isn't alarmingly low, it's certainly not at the top of the pack either.
And if we look at the trend over the past 10 years or so, that total spending as a piece of the economic pie has been remarkably stable. There haven't been any big jumps or big drops. This kind of suggests that the current level of investment is just the established norm.
And this brings us to a much more nuanced point. Maybe, just maybe, the debate isn't just about the total amount of money being spent. The real issue might be how effectively that money is being used. Are the resources actually getting to the regions and the people who need them the most? So where does all of this leave us? We've got this story of incredible national success, but it's shadowed by these deep, persistent inequalities. So let's try and wrap this up by looking at what it might take to get not just to 100% literacy, but to equitable literacy for everybody.
So, what are the big takeaways here? First, we should absolutely celebrate the incredible progress India has made. It's a huge win. Second, we have to acknowledge the deep gaps that are still there. We can't ignore them. Third, it's time to ask some tough questions, not just about the amount of money being spent on education, but about its effectiveness. And finally, we should look at the clear models of success right inside India, states like Kerala and Mizoram, which have nearly closed that gender gap.
And I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. India is getting closer and closer to the goal of universal basic literacy. But maybe the finish line is moving. Is it possible the next great challenge is less about just teaching the alphabet and more about creating a system that delivers a truly equitable and high-quality education to every single citizen, no matter who they are or where they live?